Wanted. Wanted for murder. This is the program that brings you for the first time on the air a nationwide manhunt in action. The actual facts to date on a man wanted. From the record, hear the on-the-spot reports of the actual people involved. Real names are used. Nothing is withheld. No one is protected. Here are the dramatic eyewitness accounts of a man wanted. Wanted for murder.
And now, Wanted's on-the-spot investigator, Walter McGraw.
Good evening. Once again, I'm going to take you with me on a manhunt for a fugitive who is now at large somewhere in this country. Tonight, we're not seeking a simple gangster, but an alleged killer. I've traveled all over the country finding the real people who are involved, and they will talk directly to you. A full description of our method of operation is in this week's issue of People Today. Remember, the people you hear talking are not actors, but the actual witnesses of this crime of violence. They are putting themselves on the spot to give you first-hand information about a man who is wanted. Tonight's case concerns one Philip Ferranda, a man whom neighbors said could have no enemies. But listen, these are the facts.
The date, May 14th, 1949. The location, a quiet suburban neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio.
The voices you hear next are those of the actual people who, through no fault of their own, are involved in the case of the man everybody liked, Philip Ferranda. The first voice you hear is that of a 15-year-old girl, a neighbor.
My name is Nancy Harrison, and I was in bed, and I heard voices outside. I didn't know exactly what it was. I thought maybe it was the kids playing outside. They were very loud, and one of the voices said, "Help, help, don't do it." And then there was a shot. It sounded like backfire, and then, just at that moment, my mother walked in the room, and I asked her what had happened.
I'm Nancy Harrison's mother, and after we heard what we thought was the backfiring of a car, I looked out the side window and saw a light flash off at Ferranda's side door. A man with a gray hat ran out the door. I quickly ran to our kitchen and asked my husband if he had heard a shot. He said he thought it was a car backfiring, but I told him I thought something was wrong over at Ferranda's. So we both ran out in the backyard and looked around. We couldn't see anything. So we went over to Ferranda's side door and knocked and called without receiving any answer.
I am Mr. Harrison. When we received no answer from the side door, I went to the front door and looked in. Happened to see Mr. Ferranda's body laying in the hallway. I tried the front door then, and the door was locked. So I went around to the side door and walked in, and Mr. Ferranda's body was laying in the hallway right next to the bedroom door. I felt his pulse, and he didn't have no pulse beat at all. He was just taking his last gurgle when we walked in. When I told my wife, "I think you'd better call the police, because Phil is dying."
This is Patrolman Mack, radio dispatcher for the Cleveland Police Department. Upon receiving a call from Mrs. Harrison, I dispatched cars 102, 271, and homicide car 478 with Detectives Lockwood and Morrow.
I am Vincent T. Morrow of the Cleveland Police Department Homicide Unit. We found the body of Philip Ferranda lying in this hallway. The hallway was quite small, the body of Ferranda taking up nearly the entire hallway. Ferranda was a large man, 250 pounds, and he was apparently dead on our arrival. Examination of the body, we found 2 black eyes and a large cut over the right eye, which could have been done by a blunt instrument, such as a blackjack. Further examination, we found a bullet hole in the upper left chest. After our examination, the body was taken to our county morgue for further examination by the coroner.
I'm Dr. S.R. Gerber, coroner of Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, Ohio. The examination revealed that this man died as a result of a gunshot wound of the left side of the chest with perforation of the left upper and lower pulmonary lobes and laceration of the hilus and branches of the pulmonary artery. resulting in a left pneumothorax. Further examination revealed defense marks on the left hand, which was indicated by fractures of the fingernails and abrasions of the fingers. This information was turned over to the homicide unit of the Cleveland Detective Bureau.
My name is Detective Harold C. Lockwood of the Homicide Bureau of the Cleveland Police Department. In connection with this investigation, we felt that the victim had put up an extremely valiant fight for his life. Upon examination of the backyards in the vicinity, we found in a freshly dug garden plot what appeared to be a footprint, a man's footprint. We made a plaster cast of this print, and same was preserved for evidence. Further examination in the backyards, we found a dirty gray felt hat, a man's hat, with all identifying features cut out.
These, then, were the simple facts. Police reasoned from the marks on the dead man's body he had fought for his life. But who was the intruder? Leads? They had little to go on. Indistinct footprints in the soft dirt of the yard and a soiled gray felt hat. First, the Cleveland police tried to establish a possible motive. They talked to the dead man's wife. She had been spending the evening with a Mr. and Mrs. Shields. The Shields family were boarding with the Ferandas.
I am Sophie Ferranda. That night, the Shields and I had gone visiting, and we stayed quite a long time, and when we came home, it was close to 11. And when I came in the house, there I saw the blood on the floor in the hallway there. And I just stood there and looked at it, sort of stunned, and the detectives kept asking us questions where he had been, what we had done that night. And I just stood there trying to answer him right, and it was just terrible. And I looked around the rest of the house and noticed that there was nothing stolen. But I didn't start crying. I was just too numb or shocked or something. I didn't even cry at that time.
Robbery as a motive was discarded. But what motive could there be? Phil Ferranda had no enemies. Puzzled police returned again to the only two items of tangible evidence. First, the footprints.
The outline of the foot is indistinct. The Bureau of Scientific Investigation is unable to verify the size or shape of the foot in question.
Now the police had one slim lead left. The soft gray felt hat found in the rear of the Ferranda home.
This is Mary Cowan, medical technologist at the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office Laboratory. In May of 1949, I examined a gray felt hat which had smudges of dirt and grease on the hat band of the type that would be found in garages, suggesting that the hat had been worn by a garage mechanic. Later, we determined that the hat was manufactured by the Portis Hat Manufacturing Company of Chicago.
My name is C.R. Schwedler. I work for Portis Style Industries, Chicago, Illinois. The chief of police of Cleveland, Ohio, called me regarding this case and asked if I could give him the name of Portis dealers in Cleveland and nearby towns. I told him I would be pleased to cooperate and did give him the name of 5 accounts that handle Portis hats in Cleveland, as well as one account in Elyria, Ohio.
Now the job was to find the owner. Detectives spread out, covering all 6 stores, asking one question.
We figure this guy's a truck driver. Maybe works in a garage, has a mechanic's job. There were grease marks on the hat. He wears size 7.5. You got a customer who fits that description?
Naturally, each store had dozens of them, but they were cash customers. Dead end. So police took another angle. One of those stores was located in Elyria, Ohio. The dead man had worked for the Osher Brothers Meat Company of Elyria. Coincidence? Perhaps. But detectives played the long shot. Question: had the murder stemmed from some trouble at work?
Ferranda have trouble? You kidding? He was a friend to everyone. Not just like any guy is friendly. Ferranda was especially friendly. You see, he was just a big overgrown kid. Not grown up, you know. Every time he met a stranger, he'd write their names down in a little black book. Boy, was he proud of that little black book.
A little black book. The man everybody liked kept a little black book. A search was instigated, and the book was found, and in it,
297 names were listed.
question, was one of those 297 people the killer? Each and every one was brought in for questioning.
Sure, I knew Ferranda. Saw him a couple times walking down the street. He stopped me one day and wanted to write my name down. He said for future reference, a real friendly guy.
Yeah, he used to come in the restaurant all the time where I worked. He used to kid me about wanting to call me up, but he wasn't that kind of a guy.
Ferranda. Oh, yeah, he must have been the guy I met in the streetcar.
297 names, 296 blanks. Then a lead.
My name is Alex Vicuroff. Work at Reenie's Food Town as a cheese cutter. I knew Franda for 2 years' time, talking to him once or twice during the week or so that he delivered meat. He had got himself into plenty of trouble. He had taken some money from the company which he had not returned. He also sold meat that was too old to be sold. And any man that does this will get himself into trouble sooner or later.
Meat that had passed the legal time for sale could be called black market meat. This was a new angle. It seemed unlikely to the police that Ferranda was mixed up with the racket boys, but they laid out lines to the underworld for information. Was the name Ferranda familiar to the boys? They got an answer.
Never heard of the guy.
Now the underworld was out. Police tapped lines trying to find out where Ferranda had marketed the meat. To hot shots with big dough? Did he have a private racket? What was his angle? They found it.
My name is Lucille Eby, and I was acquainted with Mr. Phil Ferranda. My estimation, he was one of the most lovable persons. Well, in fact, you'd even say lovable, because he was just like a big kid. Anything at all that you wanted done, well, he certainly did it for you. During the meat shortage, I remember particularly if you didn't have any meat, and I remember at the time, I was pregnant, and he was so worried that I wasn't going to have enough vitamins that he just went to all butcher shops trying to get some meat for me. His life with his wife was just wonderful. He just would rush home, and all he thought about was improvements for the home, and it's for his wife and for his baby.
Once again, police learned one thing. Nobody would murder Ferranda. So police started all over again, this time legwork. Back to the scene of the crime, they began the routine of questions.
Didn't Ferranda mention any enemies at all?
Wasn't he ever angry at anyone in town?
Well, didn't you see any strangers hanging around his house?
Hundreds questioned, and they finally struck pay dirt.
My name is Charles Geiger, and one afternoon we were playing baseball in the lot at about 4 o'clock when we noticed a strange man driving around the Ferranda house. This man drove around in his car and stopped in front of the Ferranda house and looked at it a minute and drove around again. And then he drove around again and stopped on the side of the Ferranda house. This man was tall, dark, and handsome, and if we ever saw him again, we'd surely know him.
Break number one. A group of children at play established the fact that a dark-haired, tall man had been seen in the neighborhood shortly before the murder, and he had been casing the Ferranda home. Casing it for what? This sounded like an underworld job, a planned job by an experienced operator. Once again, police laid out pipelines, dragging the underworld for information.
Okay, wise guy, dear. Did anyone you know fade from sight lately?
Come on, girlie. Did any of your boyfriends disappear last week?
Cut it, kid. Talk. Who's hot?
One answer.
Information is expensive, and so am I. I have inside information that Mrs. Shields has a boyfriend. You better talk to Mrs. Shields.
Mrs. Shields. Mrs. Henry Irving Shields. She was not a new name in the case. Mr. and Mrs. Shields boarded with the Ferranda family. But what had she to do with the Ferranda murder? According to our reconstruction of the facts from Cleveland police files,
Mrs. Shields? Oh, she's a real nice woman. She and her husband and their 3 children moved here from Toledo. They wanted to build a home in Cleveland. Well, while they were building, they had no place to live. You know how Phil Ferranda was. He was real generous. He just invited the whole Shields family to live with him. That's typical of Phil.
Funny thing, you know, the night Phil was murdered, Well, Mrs. Shields all of a sudden got an idea that evening that she wanted to see how the building of her home was getting along. So the Shields invited the Ferranda family to drive out and take a look at it. Mr. Ferranda was tired and refused to go. That's how come he was alone when he got murdered.
Sure, Mrs. Shields is a real nice woman. Of course, we don't know anything about a boyfriend, so to speak. There is a fellow she sees now and then, a friend of hers from the old days. We hear his name's Edward Sadowski. He lives in Toledo.
Now the scene of operations moved to Toledo. Toledo police supplied a record of Sadowski.
Edward Sadowski, first conviction 1936, juvenile delinquency, sentence indeterminate. Second conviction, breaking and entering. There's a notation on the record that Sadowski had molested another man's wife. The man in question preferred to keep his name out of it and dropped charges.
Then more and more information on Sadowski came in.
Sadowski, huh? He's quite a guy. Regular Romeo, shining up to all the married dames in town. He used to have a regular job, but he doesn't have one now. Made good pay during the war years. He worked as a mechanic.
Mechanic? That fit with the grease smudges found on the soiled gray hat in the rear of the Ferranda yard. Now, Cleveland and Toledo embarked on a full-scale search for Sadowski. On the south side of Toledo, Sadowski was well known in the beer halls and bar rooms that line the streets, where the customers cluster at 9 a.m. to welcome the day with half a load. Yes, he was well known.
Yeah, we seen him and a pretty dame in here together.
They came in together a lot of times.
Last time we saw them was early in May.
On May 14th, Ferranda was murdered, and no one had seen either Sadowski or the woman since May. The boys had one more piece of important information for the police: Sadowski's home address.
My name is Art Pagel, Cleveland Homicide Bureau, Cleveland Police Department. The Toledo police searched at Sadowski's room and found several hats, which were turned over to us. These were turned over to Mary Cowan, lab technician, who examined these hats and found them to be the same size and bore similar stains as found in the hat left at the scene of the Ferranda murder.
Determined, Edward Sadowski wasn't in Toledo, and he was wanted. A nationwide alarm was sounded for Sadowski. In the meantime, police went to pick up Mrs. Shields and bring her in for questioning. But on June 1st, 1949, they learned...
Mrs. Shields isn't home. She left here shortly before lunch yesterday and hasn't returned. Nobody knows where she is, and her husband and family are worried to death.
Now, not only Edward Sadowski was wanted, but a picture and description of Mrs. Shields was flashed across the wires of the nation. Now, police began to drag every possible source for information on the missing pair.
Seen anyone who looks like this?
Take a good look, mister. Is her face familiar?
His name's Sadowski. Is he around?
No one had seen either Sadowski or the missing Mrs. Shields, but the police had one lead.
There's one guy who might know where Eddie Sadowski is. That's his brother. He's an ex-con out on parole. His name is John Sadowski. He might have the information you're after.
Police thought finding John Sadowski would be simple. Parolees can't leave town without prior permission from parole boards. They dropped over to ex-convict John Sadowski's home, but when they got there, they learned...
John Sadowski's not at home. Oh, he's in town, all right, but he just doesn't happen to be around.
The word was unavailable. Brother John had disappeared. Now, for a third time, police sent out a citywide pickup order, and for a third time, they came up empty-handed. Cleveland police had started with the murder of a man everybody liked. Now they had two missing Sadowski brothers and one missing woman. The key in the chain of events, Mrs. Shields. Then, on June 1st, 1949, a real break.
Detective Frank D'Imperio of the Homicide Squad, Cleveland Police Department. Wait a minute. On the night that Mrs. Shields was missing, a pretty girl was seen to get into John Sadowski's automobile. This pretty girl fitted the description of Mrs. Shields. A description of the automobile owned by John Sadowski is a 1940 Chevrolet, 1949 Ohio license, QV294.
License plate number QV294 was flashed across the nation. State patrols alerted coast to coast. And while the state patrols watched, Cleveland police made a special telephone call to Detroit authorities.
We have information here that a sister of Edward Sadowski lives in Detroit. You might prepare an informal call on her.
Detroit prepared for an informal call on Sister Sadowski at 11 in the morning of June 4th. Then, at 10:45, 15 minutes before the raid, the case broke wide open.
Mrs. Shields just called her husband. She's in Detroit. She's been held captive by Edward Sadowski. She escaped from him, and her husband is going to pick her up and take her to the Cleveland police. She wants to tell them about the Faranda affair.
Detective Captain David Kerr, commanding the homicide squad in Cleveland Police Department. At the time Mrs. Shields had returned to Cleveland, we questioned her, and she admitted knowing Edward Sadowski. She further stated that she was infatuated with him, and there's no doubt she was in love with him. She stated that about the time that she met him, he was interested in who she lived with and whether they had any money in their home. He further questioned her relative to the people she was now living with, Philip Fernandi, and they agreed to burglarize the home. They actually planned a job there. Her part in the plan was that she had enticed everyone away from the home on a particular evening, and before leaving, she would see to it that the side door was left unlocked. They went ahead with their plan, but it so happened on this particular evening that Philip Fernandi absolutely refused to leave. He worked hard all day, he was a truck driver, and he said he wanted to rest. And in order to save face, she was forced to go with the rest of the family, and she had no means at all of notifying Edward. But she did leave the side door open. She stated that later she came home, found a great commotion around the home, numerous people and police, and at that time learned that Philip had been murdered. She stated that she was suspicious that Edward was the one that did the job, but it wasn't until later that she visited Edward in Detroit. She stated that Edward Sadowski made a full confession that he was the one that did the murder.
Mrs. Shields was held as a material witness in $25,000 bail. As for Brother John Sadowski,
he admitted he had broken his parole and had taken Mrs. Shields to Detroit for a meeting with his brother. He was booked in city jail as a parole violator.
Now police got a recent picture of Edward Sadowski from Brother John and took it around the neighborhood to the various people who had seen the strange, dark-haired man casing the Faranda home.
Sure, that's the man.
He's the one that parked the car.
Absolutely, he's the one.
Identifying Sadowski was one thing, finding him was another. But based on the facts you've heard tonight and or other pertinent material, on October 6th, 1949...
The State of Ohio, Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland, whereas complaint upon oath by Harold C. Lockwood has this day been filed with me, William J. Reichel, Clerk of the Municipal Court of the City of Cleveland, that on or about the 13th day of May, AD 1949, at said city and county, one Edward Sadowski did unlawfully, purposely, and while in the perpetration of a burglary, killed one Philip Faranda, contrary to the form of the statute in said case made and provided, and against the peace and dignity of the State of Ohio.
It is not our function here to determine the guilt or innocence of a man, nor do we intend to. All men are innocent until proved guilty in court. But by this warrant, this formal charge by society, Edward Sadowski is wanted for murder.
Here again is Walter McGraw. You can help find Edward Sadowski. Right now, he may be an employee in your garage, a worker in your factory. You might be his next victim, so stand by. How can you recognize him? Listen, and listen carefully.
Detective Captain David Kerr, Cleveland Police Department. Edward Sadowski is white, 31 years old, 5 foot 9.5 tall, 160 pounds, medium dark complexion, dark chestnut hair. He has heavy eyebrows, a broad nose similar to a fighter, and a thick, wide mouth.
And now, back to Walter McGraw in New York. There's only one more voice to add to the sum total of the information you've received tonight. It's the voice of the underworld.
Who knows this guy, Sadowski? This guy is nobody. He's just a plain house burglar. I've done a lot of research trying to find out about this guy. He knows nothing. He's an amateur muscling in, yeah? And he's a stupid one, too. Knocking off a guy on a burglary job. One thing I found out about this guy. He's a good-looking guy with a lot of charm, and the dames are crazy for him. And because he's so stupid, this guy is dangerous. These amateurs don't have a right to carry a gun. They get nervous and shoot. And people get killed for nothing. Some of the boys say this dope paid every cent he had to get over the border to Canada. And he's in the North Woods working in a lumberyard. And if he is, my tip is to find the best-looking dame in the district. And you'll find Sadowski, the dope, making a play.
If you have no other way of seeing a picture of Edward Sadowski, go down to your local post office. A poster with his picture is on the wall. Study that face.
Edward Sadowski is 31 years old. Height 5 feet 9.5 inches. Weight 160. Medium dark complexion. Dark chestnut hair. Eyes green, slanting. Nose broad. Mouth wide. He has a petulant expression. He considers himself a lady killer. Mentality equivalent to a 14-year-old child.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're not dealing with an ordinary run-of-the-mill criminal. Sadowski's an alleged killer. It's important for those who might be in danger now that he be brought to justice. Remember, Sadowski's an expert mechanic. At this very moment, he may be living in a new community far from his past and working in a new job. Factory owners, garage owners, foremen of lumberyards, loggers, look carefully at your employees. This is your case. You can help bring Edward Sadowski to justice. And it is your job. Last week, we broadcast the history of Myron Mike Selleck. At that time, we gave you an inside tip that Selleck was somewhere in Kentucky or Georgia. My informants were 4 weeks behind Selleck then. Now we're closing in on him. Immediately after last week's Wanted program, two people, one an NBC employee, the other an ex-schoolmate of Selleck's, reported seeing him in Los Angeles. It may be that the people who are financing Selleck's flight from Michigan have told him to go to Mexico. But listen, Selleck, the trail is getting hot. My suggestion for you is to give yourself up. There are people who don't want you taken alive. Give up to the police while you can. You are in danger, and so is your wife, Naomi. Selleck, you can't escape. So come on in while you can. Now, this is Walter McGraw saying, there's no time like now to help wipe out crime by getting both Selleck and Edward Sadowski.
Be with us again next week when you will hear the actual people involved give their eyewitness accounts of a man who kills for pleasure on Wanted. Wanted for jailbreak. All material heard on tonight's program was factual from the record. At the request of the Cleveland Police Department, pseudonyms were used for the people known as Mr. and Mrs. Henry Shields. Tonight's report was written by P.L. Mayer. Music was by Morris Mimorsky. The narrator was Fred Collins. Wanted were supervised for NBC by James Kovac, was directed and produced by Walter McGraw. Next, Boris Karloff brings you the Sports Newsreel on NBC.